been working, we have so many more actors on board. And if we look back, we can see that we started and we had 2 space companies in the region. Even if we had SSC, which is a super big one, we today have 15 altogether. Most of them are startups. So just a couple of people growing right now. Some of them are also new establishments from Germany. We have ESA Aerospace, we have the rocket factory here. At ESA, there are already about 12 people hired and working in Kiruna. And the rocket factory is hiring right now. So if you go to our homepage, ritspace.se, we have a page there with career opportunities and the links to all the opportunities that are current right today. And this is actually changing every day, of course. New positions are coming in and we are attracting people, which is fantastic. We have technicians that needs to be hired. We have test engineers for the new rockets building in the German companies. We have PhDs posts, we have postdocs, we have new scientists and teachers here at the university. So really go in and look, and also hopefully these positions will find good people to attract them to our team here. The program then today, as I mentioned, it's a very interesting program, and so many people has gathered to share their experience in how they work with regional attractiveness around space sometimes, but also around the new factory being built in Skellefteå, the Northvolt factory. So it can be different branches and different businesses, but we all have the same challenges. So we help out and we listen to each other the whole day today. We will finally listen to, also start by listening to the work package leaders of the REIT project. Then Alexander Balstrom and Johanna Westerberg, my colleagues at LTU Business, will talk about a study they have done of the impact of the space business in our region. How did it start? What does it look like today? And what can we ask and what can we see in the future here? Then we will have a short break before we will listen to Joanna Hart, who is the development manager at the Space Cluster in Harwell. She is going to talk about their experience, how they, during 10 years, have gone from a rather small cluster to a fantastic space cluster with so many more both companies and people involved. And how did they do that? And what challenges did they face during this journey? Then we will listen to Ida Lind from Skellefteå. As I mentioned, they are having a great opportunity around the Northvolt battery factory, but they are of course also seeing a lot of challenges here. How do they cope with them? How do they see to it that they make the most out of these opportunities? Then we will listen to Henrik Runnemalm, who is at JKN Aerospace in the western part of Sweden. They are also a strong space region in Sweden. How do they work with regional growth? That would be very interesting. And finally, we will listen to Niklas Österberg at Arctic Venture. He's also heavily involved with the ESA BIC and the Swedish space incubator. So he will talk about what is important for the investors' perspective when we look into an attractive region. What needs to be in place to attract more investment? We will have a short break again. As we are online, people need to move a bit so that you will keep your head sharpened. And we will finish off with a panel discussion where we have invited, of course, the speakers, but also some other guests from the region, from Sweden, and from also locally from the town of Kiruna. So that will be very interesting. What I can say is welcome, everybody. Warm welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, because this is something that we need to do together. We cannot fix everything within a small project. We cannot do it individually. We need to work together, and we need to be part of the change making that is going to be needed here. And just to illustrate this, let's see if we can get a film working here. Do you recognize yourself in this? Let's Okay. I like this sketch very much because I think that everybody could identify themselves somewhere in this ecosystem. Which gears are you in this system? And also it illustrates that we need to be working together to get this machinery going. So now we will continue with the program and we will invite our first speaker. It will be the work package leaders of our work package number 1 in the project. We have 4 different presentations, 5 minutes each, rather quick, but just to get a quick glance of what has been going on in the project and also what we are going to do this last year. So the first work package is all about R&D projects between industry and academy. How can researchers and scientists help the industry to solve challenges that are heavily connected to their business, but that they do not have time to look into themselves? But together with scientists, it's a fantastic transfer of knowledge and competence here. So do we have Anna Örvall-Rönnbäck, professor in product innovation from the Luleå University of Technology, and also Marta-Lena Antti, professor, both
Yes.
are shared professors in their subjects. And Marta-Lena is working with material science. So are we on board?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Okay, very welcome. And the floor is yours right now, ladies.
Okay. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So the back one slide. This is the first slide. Thank you. So I wanted to give you an update on what has been going on in the work package with all the PhD students. And this is what we are very proud to say, that we have now had 12 PhD dissertations within our work package. And 5 of them has been since the last Space Innovation Forum that we had in September last year. So it's really a lot of nice things going on. So these PhD students have then been doing research for 4 to 5 years together with companies in applied research. So next slide, please. Here we can see their thesis that they have produced, and they are all then in a graduate school of space technology, which I wanted to mention that now we are adding up to 48 PhDs totally since we started that in 2002. So these people have been doing hundreds of experiments. They read thousands of publications and books, and they have generated so much knowledge. So next slide, please. So we have now been interviewing these PhD students to try to find out what is it that they have produced regarding intellectual assets and knowledge. So there is a list here of all the different things that have been coming out from these projects, and the knowledge and the assets has been disseminated to companies and to the academic community. They have published over 60 publications in international journals to the academic community also. So next slide, please. So now, since 1.5 years back, we have now employed 2 new innovation PhD students and 5 new innovation postdocs that will take the work further and work more with the research together with the companies. So next slide. And we have created a new course in sustainability that will be given during April and May. It's an applied course with industry and academy together. It's how to learn more about the sustainable development goals and connect that to your research project. And we have a lot of interesting teachers in this course, and I want to point out that it's still open for registration, and it can be nice both for industry and all of you that listen can apply for this one. So next slide, please. And we are now members in the Swedish Aerospace Research Center. They were before Swedish Aeronautic Research Center, but they've changed the name because they wanted to include us and our PhD student and to make a network for aerospace research in Sweden. And we see a lot of synergies between the graduate schools. So we will give the course jointly and also another course in product innovation for aerospace application, and this together with these other universities. So that was a quick update. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marta-Lena. We should also say that all these presentations will be found on our website when this forum is over, maybe on Friday, I guess, and there you can find the links. The courses that she's talking about, at least the one in sustainability, will be also posted on the READ project, because we are taking parts of this course and making them standalone events. So if you're interested in listening to how do the space business work in this field, you will be most welcome, and we will invite you. So take a look at our homepage. Thank you so much, Anna and Marta-Lena. I know that you work in a pair here, even though Marta-Lena was presenting. The next work package that we have is about space beds. So I would like to welcome Olle Norberg, who is Vice Rector at LTU in Space. So please, Olle, tell us about the work with space beds, space
Thank you.
test beds.
Thank you, Johanna. It's very nice to be able to present what we have been doing in this part of the READ project. And what we are doing is that we're making the test facilities at both the Swedish Institute of Space Physics and Luleå University of Technology available to both the internal and, of course, also the external users. The reasons for this is that being a new company in this field is very difficult, because usually the threshold and the steep ladder to climb depends on equipment that you need to have in order to develop and test and verify and demonstrate your products. So what we want to do is really to let startups and other, also larger companies, use the excellent facilities that we have at IRF and LTU. We will have then websites that really clearly shows what is available. And the IRF Space Lab website is already online. You will easily find it. We will make a similar one for also the LTU facilities. And we will have very clear and transparent processes for how to access and use these facilities. We are continuously working with new equipment that comes into the labs, both at IRF and LTU. We've had the new vacuum chambers come in already this year, and that will continue. And so what we see with this work package and what we're doing is that we will enable startups to do what they want to do, to build products and get to the market. So we're very sure that this work package will enable new services and then in the long run then create new businesses. I'm going to show, if I can go to the next slide. If someone will help me with that. There, here we are. These are examples of the resources available at LTU, both in Kiruna and in Luleå. So as you see, I'm not going to go through the list explicitly, but there are lots of facilities that are available to both the internal and of course also the external users. So all of these are available. If you contact us, you can already now access and use our resources. What I would like to do now is to show a video that has been produced by IRF, which very nicely demonstrates the facilities at the IRF Space Lab. I'm not sure if I will do that myself. And if so, we will see if we can go to the website here. Yes.
We have been on the far side of the moon. We have explored a comet and been in orbit around Mars. Today we are on our way to both Mercury and the Sun, and will soon begin our journey to Jupiter and 3 of its icy moons. At IRF in Kiruna, we have been developing instruments for space missions for over 60 years, And in that time, much has changed. The space industry is now open to many more stakeholders and is expected to grow rapidly over the next few decades. There is an increasing need to test and calibrate new space technology, and that is exactly what IRF Space Lab can provide. Space Lab is a constantly expanding facility with the aim of continuing to be in the forefront and to develop according to the growing market. As a step in this process, we want to broaden our network of customers and partners and share with them our knowledge, passion, and ambitions. Take the step out into space with us.
So that gave a snapshot of what we're doing in this part of the project, developing resources for everyone to use. So over to you, Johanna.
Thank you so much, Ole, for your presentation. Interesting. It's also very nice to see that we have 30 years of experience in building equipment going out far out in the universe. So it's really nice to see that we can open up and let more people in so that we can meet and do things together. Thank you, Ole. The next working program is about our ecosystem and also our support system for new innovations. And we welcome Emil Svanberg, who is since 1 week actually working for another company, but still involved as our presenter today, I should say. Are you there, Emil?
I am here. Thank you, Johanna.
Very welcome. Please tell us about our innovation support system.
Thank you. So let's see. Ole is giving me the controls here. So okay. Right. So work package 3 in this RIT project is, as Johanna said, about establishing an innovation support system. And let's see. There you go. At the start of the project, I showed this illustration to kind of explain what we're trying to do with this work package, or essentially what we're trying to do with the whole RIT project. The not so happy situation. It's dry and difficult. There's not very good opportunities for life, really. And that's one way to describe the space business in northern Sweden. It's a bit graphic and overstated, you might think, but we've had excellent space activities for 60 years, as we heard mentioned by IRF, but we haven't had much growth in terms of new businesses starting and growing up here in the north. So what we would try to do, is to do things that would take us more to a situation as shown to the right here. Very colorful and full of life. So that's the high-level ambition. And one way to illustrate this, as was shown in the video that Johanna showed just a few minutes ago, is to illustrate it like this. So innovation and growth happens by a lot of different functions and meeting ideas, exchanging ideas, attracting money, attracting talent, and all kinds of things working together to generate growth and innovation. And so what we're trying to do in this work package is to run activities to make things like this happen. And a bit more clearly, we can put it like this. So we have a number of key target groups with the activities within this work package. So there's research education, which of course is the university environment. Then there's startups, small and medium-sized companies established in northern Sweden, and of course space industry represented here by corporates. So these are the main target groups for the activities, and quickly running through what we do for these groups. So for the university environment, we have early stage innovation support. There is generally available innovation support for anyone at the university. And what we've done through this project is that we have given this more of a space flavor, and we've made sure that we can reach the space subjects and the space students. We've been involved in developing the master's education curriculum. We've been involved in providing innovation content for the Graduate School of Space Technology that Marta-Lena talked about a few minutes ago. We run activities on campus, innovation workshops, and there are various kinds of contests and hackathons for this target group. Covering 4 of these groups, we have a program that we're very proud of, which is the Space Innovation Summer. So we've done it 2 years, and we're now preparing for the 3rd year. So this is a program where students work for 9 weeks over the summer on various business projects related to space. A key takeaway here is to attract and retain talent. We want more students to stay in the region, and we want them to find attractive opportunities for work and life up here. And this is a way of showing them what there is available beyond the university and beyond the well-known actors such as Swedish Space Corporation and S-Range, of course. So this is like working in a small business environment. So this is kind of a business development program, or you can think of it as a pre. And then we have for startups specifically, we're working together with Arctic Business in this work package. And of course, they are the hosts of the Swedish node in the ESA Business Incubation Center. So there's a space incubator run from Luleå. They provide funding for startups. They support and coach businesses as they build, as they start and grow. And of course, they do a lot of good work in building the teams that can make these businesses grow. And just to share some of the results here, I've listed 9 startups that have started during or just before this project started. So looking back a decade or 2 ago, there was really 0 startups like this, and now we're counting them in tens. So that's a very good result so far. And finally, we have targeted towards small that want to do business in space but don't really know how. We have business development programs to help them break the space barrier, to provide some insights and understand the market opportunities. We're also trying to build some specific business development skills related to space opportunities. And of course, connect to corporates, because this is hugely important in this ecosystem, is that we have larger companies, more established, that act as kind of engines for growth. So the activities ongoing at S-Range, at Swedish Space Corporation, are of course hugely important for small and medium-sized companies to be able to enter into this business. There need to be a financial volume, so to speak, for this to happen. So we're trying to facilitate that through this program. So thank you. That was it for my presentation of Work Package 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emil. Good to know that we are doing progress also in this work package. Of course, we will now lose Emil as a person in our project because he is going to work for RISE. And of course, it's a big loss for us. We're looking for a new project leader. Anybody out there who is interested? But Emil, I also think that just doing what you are doing right now is actually strengthening our ecosystem. You go from our small community here and you go into another, which means that you will build a bridge towards RISE, who we are already working with. So this is actually a key in strengthening our ecosystem. What would you say?
Absolutely. Mobility of people is a well-known, well, it's known to be important for growth and innovation overall. So absolutely.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for what you have done for the project, but also we're looking forward to collaborate with you in the future. So thank you, Emil.
Thank you.
And then we go over to our last work package, which is all about this last part that Emil was talking about, these SMEs, these high-tech, very skilled SMEs that we have in our region. How can we get them on board the space community? Well, we started a work package about clustering and helping these small and medium-sized regional companies. And Olle Persson will talk about this in the last presentation within the project. Please, Olle, welcome.
Thank you, Johanna. Aerospace Cluster Sweden, it has a, I would say, 10-year history, but some 2 years ago, we inaugurated the Northern Node. Normally an aerospace, or normally a cluster is supposed to be regional, but aerospace, which is of space and aviation, it's hard to be regional in a country as Sweden. So instead we have 3 nodes. One in Trollhättan, that is run by Leif Johansson, and one in Linköping, which is run by Göran Berlemo, who is also our CEO, and then me, Olle Persson, that runs the Northern Node. The Northern Node is, of course, a little bit more focused on space than aviation, even though that we also like airplanes. The sole meaning of this cluster is to increase the business in the aviation and space arena. And aviation and space is everything that is needed to get things off our Earth. And if we look at the Northern Node and the possibilities for SMEs in our region, we can clearly see that the effects of the investments that Esrange are doing and all the new customers that are coming, now there is work coming out for our SMEs. So we can clearly see that we started this node, this part of the aerospace cluster in the right moment, because now we're ready to help the customers that are coming. And we can already see that we have a couple of companies here in Kiruna that has joined us, and we're working for more. We really don't want to be more than 50 companies because then it will be too difficult to handle. But in Kiruna, I think I would say in the northern region, about 10 companies would be quite nice. What's upcoming? ERCP, the Corporation for Clusters, has a business-to-business aerospace technology in June. So of course, we will send out more information about that. We have also started a second round of a SME development program that we will now be starting in March. And it will be focused on how to use satellite data, which is what we normally call downstream, but that is a sort of business that is easier for companies to do than building rockets, of course. I will also run a short film that is more or less a premiere. See that it runs.
Aerospace Cluster Sweden, the gateway to the Swedish aerospace business. Growing up, we are told that we should reach for the stars. That is exactly what we do. We understand your needs and have the technical know-how to meet them. Together, we hold the knowledge and experience to enhance innovation and solve your problems with the latest technology. With an understanding for our customers and foresight, we plan your project. With precision and efficiency, we bring your visions to life. We work with your specifications in detail towards the end product to make that certain piece fit just perfectly. We are both generalists and specialists in various fields like innovation, design, satellite technology, manufacturing, launch development, maintenance, airport logistics and infrastructure, and more. We have the experience and knowledge. We are innovation. We are Aerospace Cluster Sweden, the gateway to the Swedish aerospace business.
So, aerospace, whatever that is needed to get off the ground into space or flying. So if you have any needs, just let me know and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you so much, Olle. I think that this short film illustrates very well that we are not dealing with only rocket science in this business. Of course, there's a lot of high tech and a lot of rocket science, as it should be, but it's also a very broad variety of competences that is needed. So we are working hard all the way from Skellefteå down up to the whole region that we call Övre Norrland in Swedish. We are working to see and to find and identify all the competence that we have that we could use in this business. So the next thing coming up, as Olle was talking about right now, is our SME program. If you happen to be an SME program, an SME company interested in how can you make business out of free satellite data that is there for you, you take that data, you transform it into products and services, and you see that you make business out of it. This is a program that we are offering you. We will very soon post it on the website. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to contact us and we will talk about if your specific company would be a good match for this program, because this business of satellite images is booming. It is really an opportunity. We will come back to that later on. So thank you so much, all the project leaders in the project. Now we will go over to two of my colleagues at LTU Business. It's Alexander Bergström and Johanna Westerberg. They are business developers and also analysts. They have been doing a study for us, looking into the impact of space in our region. They started in 1957 when the Institute of Space Physics started their activities at another name at that time, but anyway, and what has happened during all this time? Why are we such a successful space region, even though Emil showed this desert environment? That is only the part of spin-offs he has been talking about. We have not been very good in spin-offs, and we are changing that right now. But we have been flourishing in so many other ways in this region. How come? And what does it look like today? And what can we see in the future? What opportunities do we have if we play our cards right? So Alexander and Johanna, are you there?
Yes.
And are you ready to present?
Definitely, yes.
Fantastic. So please,
Great.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Johanna. Thanks for the introduction. And thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. Johanna mentioned we have been, we got the task from you just before Christmas that you wanted us to look into this, what you just described, and look at sort of what has been the main events that has led us to where we are today, and also what does our cluster look like today. But also looking into the future, what can we tell about how our cluster will develop? What is likely to believe about our future? We are here presenting our study, Johanna and I, so it's a bit of a confusion here since we have two Johannas. Anyway, we started this project just after Christmas, and we are here presenting our main conclusions in a, I guess, a condensed way, but what we thought was the most interesting parts of our study. Okay, so if I can get the control here. Okay, yes, great. So my name is Alexander Balstrom. I work as a management consultant at LTU Business, and Johanna is my colleague. It's also a management consultant. We haven't been working a lot with space before in the space industry, but we've done similar studies, similar market research studies and reports, and working with strategy for different types of companies and in the other industries. So we have some experience of similar, I guess you would say, projects, but not within space. So it's been great and very, very interesting to see what our region is doing with as a lot of the other speakers has mentioned already. So we will start off by looking backwards and also looking at what our cluster looks like today. We will then move on talking about the trends at the global scale and how they affect our cluster and what opportunities are presented by these trends. We also want to do a comparison to how other clusters and other countries are performing when it comes to growth, growth in the space industry and space clusters, and what can we learn from other countries and clusters. And then finally, a glance into the future. I mean, it's going to be a projection, but it's also highly dependent on which actions we take. So, but we'll talk more about that later. So I think it already has been mentioned, but our clusters sort of formed or started back in 1957 when the Swedish Institute of Space Physics was founded. There were some activities before that, although mostly academical related, some minor projects, I believe, but officially it started back in 57. In 64, the S-Range Space Center was founded, then operated not by the Swedish Space Corporation, who operates it today, but the European Space Agency, which had another name at the time, but so it wasn't Swedish. In 72, we had the Swedish Space Corporation was founded, and also the Swedish National Space Agency was founded. And at that same year, Sweden acquired S-Range. So this was a quite big year and a quite big commitment for a small country within space at the time, like Sweden was. So then it really gained some traction. In 81, ACE is an international scientific association with members and institutes in several countries, conducting research experiments in ionospheric and atmospheric measurements with radar, and is still active today and an important part of our cluster. The following years had a lot of like the most impactful events had a lot to do with the education within space. Umeå University was established themselves in Kiruna in 85, and followed Luleå University and of Technology, and also Space Campus Higher Educations, so Space High School in the year 2000. So now we suddenly have a lot of space students, which is great. And then, as mentioned before already, but in 2015, the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center was established in Kiruna, in our region. So now we suddenly have startups, which is completely new for our industry or our cluster, and a great and important part of our future development. So.
Yes, I think something has happened to our PowerPoint, but I hope you can see it anyway. Yeah, and what Alexander just been talking about, that's just a few of the historical event that has been important, I think we could talk about the history for the entire presentation. But we can see that the historic initiatives that Alexander mentioned has been the key driver of our employment growth in our cluster. During 2020, we almost reached 500 employees, but we can also see that the curve has been quite linear during the last 20 years. On the other hand, we know that a lot happened last year, and we can see that the curve has started to go upwards again. So it will be really interesting to see what happens, how this curve develops in the coming years due to the new establishment of companies and also the startups. So what makes our space clusters so special then? First, we have our geographical location, which is clearly one of our biggest strengths. There's not a lot of similar places in Europe, and our location also makes it possible for us to both communicate with polar satellites, but also to study the northern lights. And we have a very large impact area with low air traffic, which makes it a lot easier to conduct different space activities. And this large unpopulated areas also makes it a unique selling point for us because it's rare in Europe. We also have our existing infrastructure. Even though our region is large in area, we both have relatively large cities with airports and good communication, both airports and public transportation. And our large area also gives us the potential to expand both in Kiruna, but also in the rest of the region if we would like to do that. And as we know, since we have larger actors such as the Swedish Institute of Space Physics, as well as the Swedish Space Corporation, we already have test and research and launch infrastructure in place, even though we know that it is being further developed at the moment, as well as in the future. And then we also have our established ecosystem within our space cluster. We're not starting from scratch, not at all. We already have a lot of international collaborations in place. And we also have a strong academic foothold, both at the Swedish Institute of Space Physics, but also at the university and the high school. As we know, we have a number of active space industrial space actors, such as the Swedish Space Corporation, but we see that new companies are establishing themselves in our space cluster, and that new startups are popping up, which is really interesting. We also have different supporting actors in our space cluster. We are helping companies with their business development, and we also have the European Space Agency and their Business Incubation Center, who are helping startups in the space industry.
Okay, so moving on to talking about the trends and how they affect our cluster. Johanna and I, we struggled quite a bit with this part. There's a lot of trends available that we could bring up here today, but we had to sort of condense it in one way and present it in a way that makes sense for us and our cluster. See if I think I lost the control here. I can't switch slide. Okay, now it works. But it all starts with the development of technology, like in any other industry, more or less. New technology enables a lot of things for our region and the space industry. We have, for example, it's enabling easier and cheaper access to space. And this is sort of what drives the formation of what we usually talk about as new space. A lot of smaller actors are able to compete and to make businesses within the space industry. It's also enabling more value creating downstream applications. So what we can see in the industry is that it's shifting from being a typical tech push industry to a more towards a need pull industry. So we're now starting to think about what can we, we're starting with the need. We need a better application for farming, as an example. How can we make that instead of tech pushing it out? And it's also enabling more space exploration and planetary missions, which is more of the academic side maybe. And this creates opportunities for our cluster and our region. And we wanted to mention just a few. We already had a couple of great examples from the work package leaders presenting what they're doing in their work packages. But this is more of a general view of what is happening both in the industry, but also in the academia. So maybe the biggest news of the last couple of years is that the Swedish Space Corporation is building a launch site, which will become, and they will become a launch service provider. And this is obviously huge for our region. It already has had quite some effects. We've seen the establishment of 2 new rocket manufacturers, ESA Aerospace and the Rocket Factory. We can also see that the business support segment, which was mentioned as quite important for our cluster, is being developed. ESA, the Business Incubation Center, and also the SME network is forming, and we can see increased activities in that. There's also more and more investment in the global situational awareness, like the Global Watch Center, which is a collaboration between the Swedish Space Corporation, our university, and also a consultancy, AFRY. And they're building basically a center for space data and analyzing it and making it easier and more available for other actors to use through AI also. So that's a quite interesting initiative.
Yes, so if we look at the academic side of our space clusters, we know that the Swedish Institute of Space Physics is in their planning phase for their new space lab. And this means that they want to expand their services and open up their infrastructure and expertise to external actors. And Lund University of Technology has become a selected European university in space, which entail a higher collaboration among the 5 selected universities, as well as higher flexibility for both the researchers and students. Then we have ASCAD 3D, which is also being developed. It will be an international research infrastructure, a radar system for the scientific study of Earth's atmosphere and ionosphere. And there's also a wish to establish more research groups at the Lund University of Technology. So they would like to expand their space research even further in the future. So we can see that both the industrial and the academic initiatives, these were just some examples, but we can see that they have positive spillover effects on our society, both direct and indirect impacts, for example, higher tax revenues, but also increased need for example, housing. But it also creates more soft influence on our society. For example, it's creating a higher sense of pride within our region. It's also strengthening our space brand internationally and placing Norrbotten on the global map. And we believe that if we manage to grow our space cluster, it can become a future lighthouse.
Sorry, I think I lost the control again.
Yes, and what we mean with the lighthouse is that a lighthouse is something that is well known internationally. It puts Sweden on the global map, or in this case also Norrbotten. It's something that people talk about when they think about Norrbotten and Sweden. For example, we have the Ice Hotel in Jukkasjärvi or the Tree Hotel in Harads. But we also believe that when people think about Sweden, or Norrbotten in the future, they can also associate it with our space cluster.
Okay, so we will now do what we call it a comparison, could be a benchmark, but I think comparison is a better word for it, where we look at other countries and other clusters. So we divided it in that way, and we started to see what can we learn and how are we performing comparing to others. So what can we learn from other countries? From here we looked at the UK and also Luxembourg. And we also looked at the cluster level, we looked at Harwell, which we will hear much more about later. But we also looked at Higen Aerospace cluster in Bilbao, Spain. So there's a lot of great initiatives going on in these countries that we were looking at in relation to space, but we sort of clustered them and collected them into 4 main key initiatives that we see as most important and relevant for us as well. So firstly, ambitious targets. So this is about setting and specifying governmental space plans, basically, in goals for growth and for improved space related activities, and being quite specific with it at the governmental or country level. So for example, the UK has set goal to achieve 10% of the global space market by 2030, which is a quite ambitious goal. But it's also measurable, and that's, I think, what is key in this initiative. We also have the formation of clusters and investment in infrastructure from a governmental perspective as one key initiative. We can see that the UK is performing very well in this area as well. They are investing in spaceports around the country, and also they are dedicating resources and forming clusters across the country, which they call catapults. The third key initiative for growth is the financial support and incentives. So this is basically various forms of tax breaks and also funding and financial grants to steer and to attract international collaboration, but also establishments of international space companies within the region, within the country. So Luxembourg they have various forms of tax credits and financial supports for R&D, for example, for new investments, for IP. And this is creating a lot of interest from international space companies to establish offices in these countries. And lastly, we have laws, regulations, and declarations. This is more about, laws and regulations cannot be the bottleneck of the development of a space industry. That's the key takeaway. You have to be quick-paced and have quick regulatory responses to market demands and changes in the market. So that's the key takeaway from that, I guess.
And then we also looked at the cluster level, and here, as Alexander mentioned, we looked at Harwell in the UK and Higen in Spain. And we identified some key initiatives for their growth. First, they promote synergies through collaborations among several disciplines and actors. For example, you can share facilities to either keep the costs down or to work jointly to utilize different strengths. The clusters also have ambitious targets and specified goals, and these goals and targets are also connected to the national space strategy. And specified goals are very important in order to be able to dedicate resources and to develop strategies how to actually reach these goals. And the clusters also have a detailed and continuous evaluation of their cluster, and this links back to the previous point. If you don't have specified goals, then it's quite difficult to measure how well you're performing or even when you have reached a specific target. They both have a strong academic base as well as a strong tech and business support. And this support is ranging from incubation and intellectual property to merge and acquisition. So they have a lot of different actors supporting these members. And we know that the initiatives at a national and cluster levels are required for the cluster's growth. And if we take these success factors that we have identified on a national and a cluster level and then compare them to our own cluster, then it's interesting to see that what can we actually learn from this.
Yes, so as you can see here on the slide, we have the national level at the top and the cluster level at the bottom. So firstly, laws, declarations, and regulations, we are performing quite well here. We recently established a new space law. So from what we've learned from our interviews doing this study, this is not really a bottleneck for Swedish space industry and our cluster here in Norrbotten. We also have a very strong academic base. This has been probably the main driver for our growth over the time. And as we saw in the beginning of our presentation, that was the foundation of our space cluster. So we have strong research, we have students graduating, so we have competence popping up more and more. Ambitious targets and continuous evaluation. We have a space strategy, which has just a couple of years ago was established. What we lack right now is sort of the measurable targets at the governmental level and to spread that across clusters. What is our cluster here in Norrbotten supposed to achieve in order to contribute to the national goals? Also the cluster formation and infrastructure. We don't really have officially formed a cluster as we see it. It's more something that has grown and become our space cluster over time. What we see is lacking is the dedication and the definition of our cluster, and also resource dedication in these clusters. Someone has to own the cluster and measure the cluster and set targets for the cluster, sort of driving it as an organization in itself. And this also links back to the cluster level to set targets at the cluster level. What are our clusters supposed to achieve in order to contribute to the overall national goals for Sweden within the space industry, the space sector? Tech and business support. This is, as we've talked about, this is growing at the moment in our cluster. But what we see is we see quite a lot of activities within the startup scene and also for SME networks that are now taking form. I think what's lacking right now is more about supporting new players who want to establish within our cluster. So international players who want to move here and open up an office and set parts of their operation in our region. Also, the form of synergy utilization is something that we could improve on. We can be better at creating forums where we can interact and collaborate, find synergies, share infrastructure, for example, in order to cut costs for overall costs for players. And lastly, let's see here. Lost the control. Okay, financial incentives. This is sort of, as you've seen, that what we graded it as red, it's not really existing today. We think that from a governmental perspective and from a national level, what we need is to implement financial models that incentivizes innovation, new establishments, spin-offs, startups, and those types of what we need in order to grow, basically. So this is highly important as we see it.
So if we would glance into the future then and make an educated guess, then it's important to look at our cluster at the moment. Where are we now? What's happening? The ongoing initiative. But it could also be interesting to see how other clusters have developed over time, which then can give us an indication of our possibilities and opportunities. So we know that we already got great prerequisites. Our geographical location is one of our key strengths, which is a unique selling point as well. We also know that there are many ongoing initiatives, both within the industry and the academia. We just mentioned a few examples, and we have heard other examples during the day. And if we manage to play our cards right, if we manage to handle the challenges that we are facing today and the challenge that we may be facing in the future, as well as if we manage to seize the opportunities that arises, then we can actually have the potential to grow our own space cluster.
So as Johanna mentioned, our future growth is dependent on actions and the actions that we take today. As you've seen this slide before, or this graph before. It's the employment that we brought up in the beginning of our presentation. If we don't pursue the actions that we see as necessary, we will still exist. Although we cannot expect to grow because other regions and other clusters are continuously developing. So we need actions in order to attract new companies and to grow as a cluster. And as Johanna mentioned, a lot is happening right now. We have 13 new startups within the last couple of years. We have 2 new mid-Q rocket manufacturing companies. And this is just proof that a lot is happening right now and that we are at the brink of something quite interesting, we believe. And growth in other clusters, well, we wanted to look at, again, we looked at Harwell Space Cluster. How have they been growing during the last couple of years? And this is just gives us an indication of how it's possible to grow, since doing a projection at the cluster is quite difficult. But if you look at Harwell, we can sort of get an idea of what's possible. The graph is somewhat malfunctioned, I believe, but you can see what it says. From just the last, I think it's 10 or 11 years, they've grown from just a handful of companies to over 90 active organizations, and from just something about 100 employees to over 1,000 today. And as you can see, is that the pace of growth from both organizations and employees are parallel. So this gives, in order to grow, at least if we look at Harwell, you have to grow through the establishment of new actors. It is not an organic growth as much as an inorganic growth. So in order to grow, we need to attract more organizations.
So if we go back to the question, what will our cluster look like in 10 to 15 years? And we base that estimate on what our cluster looks like today, the ongoing initiatives, as well as the development of other clusters, then we estimate that we will have somewhere between 50 to 70 actors within our space cluster, as well as somewhere in between 800 to 1,000 employees. And as Alexander mentioned, that we need to attract new actors in order to grow. And these actors can be both industrial as well as academic, both within the actors and the employees. But we think that we've taken more of an industrial perspective because it's easier to estimate and calculate. You can, of course, also see the growth in revenues, for example, in both industry and the academia new project, for example. And if we also expect a shift from more of the governmental investments to more commercial ones, but we see that at the moment we're in the beginning of our cluster and we want to grow it, then the national support is very important. But we think that over time we will go more towards these commercial and private investments, and we will likely be able to create a more self-sufficient ecosystem. And based on all the insights that we have gained during our study and shared with you today, we believe that our space cluster will have a bright future, and we really look forward to see how it develops over time. And with that said, we would like to say thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanna and Alexander, for this very, very interesting study. I mean, the people who are in this business, we know about a lot of these things, but it's always very important to compare, to study, to really think about what is going on and what we need to do in the future to play our cards right. We have a question from the audience to you, and it is, why did you choose UK and Luxembourg on the national level, and how come you have been comparing our cluster with Harwell and Bilbao?
Yes, it was during our interviews that we got these examples. They were mentioned a few times by different respondents, so we thought it was interesting to look further into both the UK and Luxembourg and Harwell and Higen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a lot of interviews and people in this industry have been helping you, of course, with all your inputs, and which has resulted in this presentation that will be published on our homepage. You have it in the chat. I would also like to remind people to shut down their microphones, because as you can see, the mic is also choosing who would be in the picture. So please help us with that. You were talking a lot about using our cards right and playing our cards right. And tomorrow we will have a workshop about this. So we will be welcoming all of you who would like to join us. It's the same link as today. We talk about how our opportunities here and our possibilities, and what is needed actually from all of us to play these cards in the very best way. But now we will take a short break. In 10 minutes, or in 8 minutes, I should say, we will be listening to Joanna Hart at the Harwell Space Center. So that will be very interesting when she can talk about her project herself. So please take a break, stretch your legs, have something to drink, and we will meet again 10 minutes to 10.